I used to work at Wendy's as a manager. It was already a bad job, but my general manager was nice, and most employees were easy to deal with. All this started when I was already working 65-hour a week. I was offered a $100 bonus to work one of my only days off. I decided to do it, and later that week, before I had even been paid, I was asked to come in again. I said this time I would like $150, as at this point I had worked almost 23 days without any days off. They said they'd do it, so I went ahead. Cut forward 3 weeks. I've been asking about my money for a while now. I was told by my general manager that I could speak to my district manager, as he would be in later that night. The conversation goes like this. Hey, do you know what's going on with the bonus? I'm owed $250 with both days. The district manager tells me, well, that's why I came here. The store has been having trouble making money. So basically, he's telling me that my performance isn't good enough. At this point, I'm working dinner rush and the whole night with me and 3 others, my girlfriend, best friend, and other friend that has grown close. He continues, your shift isn't making as much money as others and your drive time is higher. Well, we are doing all we can. It takes extra time when we only have half the number of people with the same amount of customers. That's really no excuse. I just ignored what he said and asked him, when am I going to receive my bonus? The district manager was a very sheepish man, so he is very obviously scared when he tells me this. We cannot give you a bonus until the revenue rises and drive time goes down. I am speechless at this point. The rest of the conversation was a blur. I grew up on the South Side. You didn't mess with people's money. A day passes. I've had time to collect myself and speak to my entire crew. Everyone agrees to walk out with me. So I called my district manager. The phone starts to ring, but then it cuts off. He declined my call. So I called him again and again and again. Finally, I just left him a voicemail. Look, Jacob, you need to talk to me. You have until 8:45 to call me back or all of the night crew is gone. At this point, it is 7:30. I go into my office and start watching my boss's email. She leaves it open and logged in. I figured he would probably email her before calling me. Around 20 minutes of watching this email, and boom, an email pops up. Emergency, Lonnie. This idiot put my name on the email. So, of course, I read it. Long story short, in the email, it was him trying to make sure my general manager was going to be ready to go to work, aka he wasn't going to call me or give me my money. So I got all my people together and we walked out, leaving everything out. All the meat, all the toppings, the fryer, everything. The next day, I turn in my keys. About a week later, I'm called by my brother who had also worked at the store. What's up, bro? Jacob lost all of his stores, and he has to go back to Indiana now. If you don't know, the district manager's pay is based on the amount of stores they have and how much they make. When he moved to Indiana, his wages got reduced from $65,000 to $40,000. All this for $250. So this happened about 7-8 years ago. My grandfather ran this electrical supply store that his father started and his still-living mother owned. My great-grandmother also owned quite a bit of real estate and land around the town and was a slumlord landlord. She was the epitome of evil to quite a lot of people, and everyone hated her, including most of my family. To give you some traits of this woman, she threw a scalding hot pot of coffee on my uncle, snuck into my grandparents' house one night and tried to beat my grandmother with a baseball bat, etc. Just an all-around spiteful human being, but, family. She was in her 90s and still had plenty of life in her. She took absolutely no meds, not even aspirin. This woman even survived a hit on her that resulted in her being forever stuck in her brain. That was a traumatic experience, but a story for another time. Well, my grandfather managed the store. My uncle bid their supply jobs, and my mother handled all the rentals. I helped around pretty much everywhere and grew up in that business. Well, one day out of the blue, my estranged great-aunt-grandfather's sister shows up to visit my great-grandmother. No big deal. She's been known to do this about every 4-5 years. Well, over the course of the following months, we had noticed a change in demeanor towards us. She started spending all her time with her daughter, who we'll call Gail. We didn't know it at the time, but Gail was having her rewrite her entire will. Over the following months, Gail had enlisted the help of some of our local PD using her mom's checkbook. Taps were placed on all our phones. My grandfather and uncle were both arrested under mysterious circumstances. My grandfather's mentally disabled brother died under mysterious circumstances in their home. She had the power of attorney of my mom held, revoked, and put in her name, and then had my great-grandmother declared incompetent. It was a complete mess that hit us all in a row. Then she up and fires everyone in the family because it's now all hers. Luckily, at this time, we were able to destroy almost every physical copy of data we had, but not the computers. She changed all the locks and even had her corrupt cop buddies help play guard dog for her. To say we were furious would be an understatement. My family had poured their heart and souls into that business for decades, and it was all ripped out from under us in an instant. My family likes to take the high road, but me, not always. I pondered and waited for the right moment. It was about 2 months later when a very rough storm was rolling through one summer night. I grabbed my bag of supplies and hopped into my truck. It was about 1 a.m., and the town was dead. No one wanted to get out in that torrential downpour. I pulled up behind the building and killed the vehicle. Now, I was pretty much raised in this building and knew it inside and out. I also had helped install the security cameras, so I had that knowledge as well. I picked the machine shop door and snuck in. From this point on, I began to lace every possible surface with poison ivy. Keyboards, mice, phones, counters, doorknobs, toilet seat, toilet paper, just anything I knew she would touch. Interesting little fact about my family. Almost everyone in my family is highly allergic to it, so much so that they have to go to the hospital just for getting near it. I lucked out on the genetic lottery and it doesn't affect me at all. After every surface had a nice, oily film to it, I proceeded to open up the business computers and wipe every financial record and every backup. I also decided to sabotage the computer's electrical supply so it looked like a power surge blew it. To my glee, I heard the next day that she was in the hospital and a lightning strike had fried their comps. She spent that entire week in the hospital and had to keep going back for months because they just couldn't get rid of the poison ivy. All invoices and accounts, both for the electrical supply business and the hundreds of rentals, were all lost. Literally, all of the information had just disappeared. She was never able to truly salvage either business. She was a raging sociopath and definitely not cut out for business. I've heard over the years that she barely salvaged the rentals. One tenant threw a brick at her car for threatening her. Several people have shot up the business, bricks thrown through her windows, etc. I'm sure there's way more, but I don't keep up. This happened when I, male, was a freshman at a small college towards the beginning of my first semester. I had a rather uncomfortable incident with my former roommate. The issue itself isn't really relevant to the story here. I was the initiator and at-fault party in the incident, although it was unintentional. My roommate was extremely mad at me. I apologized profusely as I felt bad and didn't mean to cause an issue. After our classes, we talked it out, and he said that he believed that it was unintentional and that he forgave me. What I didn't realize at the time is that he had already reported me to the college before we fully made up, which he told me after he forgave me. Things were pretty awkward between us over the weekend. I stayed with a friend to give my roommate some space. I wasn't contacted by the college, so I assumed he had reached out and told them that we settled the issue. Everything changed that Monday. I received a call while in class from Student Life directing me to call back immediately and set a meeting for discussion and review. I met with them multiple times over the following days, but at the end of it I went basically unpunished due to a lack of evidence for any consequences from the college. My roommate and I were on fine terms, and I had the college off my back, so I thought I was basically done with the issue. However, I was then called into a meeting with my roommate and a Student Life employee where I was told that my roommate was no longer comfortable living with me. This caught me off guard because things seemed okay between us, but I suspected that he told his parents what had happened and that they were encouraging or forcing him to stop rooming with me. By this point, I had spent hours trying to rectify the issue with the college and my roommate, so I was pretty mad that the meetings were continuing and no one was moving on. In the meeting, my roommate asked me to move out of the room since I had caused the issue, but the college employee told me that they have a policy that they cannot force anyone to move out of a room. Like I mentioned, I caused the issue, but I was pretty mad at this point, so as kindly as I could, I refused to move out of the room. Both my roommate and the employee aggressively urged me to move, but I cited their own policy that they had just stated, that I could not be forced. If my roommate no longer wants to live together, he can solve that by being the one to move. So the next day, he was gone. I then had a room to myself for the foreseeable future, although the college told me that someone else could be moved in at any time. At the start of the second semester, the same student life employee who I had met with emailed me and a handful of other students, an even number, in my building without roommates informing us that we had to consolidate. We were given a deadline if we wanted to be proactive and make arrangements to move in with a specific person. I didn't know anyone on the list, so I waited to be randomly assigned, hoping that the new roommate would be willing to move in my existing room. The deadline came, and I was assigned to live with someone new. I met with the guy for lunch. He was sitting when I walked in, but he quickly revealed to me that he was partially paralyzed and therefore had to live on the first floor. I lived on the fourth. So obviously, if I lived with him, I would have to move out of my room. Of course, I immediately remembered the college policy that they could not force anyone to move out of their room. I told the guy that he seems like a great roommate and that it was nothing personal, but that due to this policy, I simply would not be moving to his room, which would benefit us both. The deadline to move came, and all other students needing to move had already done so. So this was the only option for me to get a roommate at this time. I didn't notify the college that I wouldn't be moving. I just didn't move. I started getting emails from the employee almost daily demanding that I move, to which I replied citing the conflicting policy that they cannot force me to do so. The college threatened to charge me double for occupying a double as a single, but I repeated their own policy back to them again and again and told them that I would be happy to consolidate by having someone move in with me, but that it was not my fault that the guy that paired me with was not able to move to a higher floor. Eventually, they gave up and I ended up keeping my own room for the rest of the year.